Salutations, my friends, I'm TheMightyMander, and I'm on spring break. Or at least I think it's spring. Spring! And you can tell I'm on spring break because, well, I'm at my house again. I'm not at school, I'm at home. And you can also sort of tell that I don't fully live here anymore because any gaming memorabilia that I had in this room has been replaced by dead houseplants and knickknacks. Such as this guy here. We'll take a look. On board with the Lord. Where do we even get this thing? Okay, let's just play a game. Come on. Roll the film. Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, huh? Well, on the surface, it definitely has the potential to be that hidden gem blockbuster I've so desperately been looking for. Released in 2010 on the Xbox 360 and PS3, Enslaved is an action platforming adventure game which is apparently an adaptation of the ancient Chinese novel Journey to the West from the 16th century. That's pretty cool, actually. Very interesting. And it's not the only detail to stand out about this game before I play it either. This game apparently has some major voice and motion capture talent, not only in the form of Andy goddamn Serkis, which is insane to think about considering this game never got a sequel, but also Lindsay Shaw, which, if you don't recognize that name, you may recognize her from her role as Mose in Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, so that's also pretty cool. Not what I expected, but it, I'm in. So this game doesn't waste any time getting into the action. I'm glad they took this approach rather than the info dump of lore right at the beginning of the game. I'm neck deep in Mass Effect anticipation right now, and throw Horizon Zero Dawn into the mix and I don't think I can handle any more lore. I like an action-packed opening as much as anybody else, but this is actually pretty confusing for me. This dude I'm playing as doesn't seem to know how the he got here, and neither do I. Okay, so let me fill in some backstory. You play as this guy, whom we eventually figure out doesn't actually have a name, so people call him Monkey. So, your action hero is a dude who was raised in the wild, yet somehow speaks perfect English, complete with wise-ass remarks, and his name is Monkey. Hi, Monkey Man! To be fair, he does look like a damn monkey. Back is all arched and his hair is crazy, and he's got this fabric that hangs off the back of his pants and looks like a tail. And also, this dude is fucking ripped. And look at those shoulders, man. I mean, Nathan Drake pretty much lucks his way out of everything, but if there's anyone who looks like he can actually scale the side of a skyscraper, it's definitely this guy. So, let's talk story, shall we? You chase this unknown woman through the interior of a slave ship. You know it's a slave ship because this guy gets his face burned off for talking to you. So, you hitchhike on this girl's escape pod, crash land because of course you do, knock yourself unconscious because of course you do, and then wake up to find that this mystery woman has emblazoned you with a slave headband just like the one that killed that other guy and is holding you hostage because of course she did. Wait, what? That's the setup for the relationship between the two main characters in this game? She's enslaved me? Oh shit. You know what? I get that now. I'll talk more about that later. But yes, the only other main character in the game, this girl who we eventually find out is named Trip, does enslave you, with the main plot of the first half of the game being escorting her home to her town and her father. And I use that word very carefully, escorting. I say that because the first half of this game is literally one giant f***ing escort mission. And it's that kind of escort mission. It's the bad kind. The kind where your companion is completely incompetent. The kind where she either climbs up ledges with ease or needs you to haul her ass up depending purely on whether or not it's convenient to her. The kind where you sometimes have to pick her up and carry her to the next area or throw her up or across ledges, like I said, depending purely on whether or not it's convenient to her. Trip has a hard case of damsel in distress syndrome, and that's not just an annoyance to the player, it's a disservice to the character, but that's another thing that I'll get to later. In my opinion, though, the real backbone of this game is the hand-to-hand combat because the climbing just falls flat for a multitude of reasons. Here are a few of them. First of all, navigating the environment in this game is really easy. There's practically no risk of missing a jump or handhold because you just lock onto everything as soon as you jump. There's just no challenge to it. Navigation of the environment should be the bread and butter to a game like this, but instead, it feels as though it would have been outdated even in 2010. Okay, so take a look at this. In all the different types of climbing obstacles that I've encountered in this game, there's only one that I would really consider to be a satisfying move, and it involves these monkey bars. So whenever you just jump onto it normally, like you would any other obstacle, it looks like this. But if you tap the jump button again as soon as you hit the bar, it looks like this. It's a very satisfying move, but it's not enough to salvage the entire mechanic of climbing in this game, the rest of which just is kind of tedious and kind of boring. Here, there's just no nuance to it, there's no challenge to it, there's no fluidity to the control, it just really doesn't work. However, the combat in this game fares slightly better. Here's where you get to see a little bit of that Caesar badassery from your boy Andy here. Monkey's primary weapon is this staff that you acquire early on in the game, and to sum it up, it's really fun to beat the shit out of robots with this thing. You got your standard light attacks, heavy attacks, charge attacks, dodging, blocking, and counter attacks. You've also got a special attack, which is really fun to pull off once it charges up. You can use all of these moves to pull off some crazy and satisfying maneuvers, and some of the little touches, like these action cams that pop up sometimes in finishing an encounter or when performing an execution on a specific type of enemy, feel positively badass. The boss fights do fall a bit flat though, unfortunately. Most of them are played on this hoverboard thing called the Cloud. Oh yeah, there's a fucking hoverboard in this game, I forgot to mention. While the Cloud controls fine, the encounters don't seem to have been built around this hoverboard mechanic, because all you have to do to beat most of these bosses is stun them and then mash them up close until they get back up. There's also some shooting in the game, though it's much more simplistic than the hand-to-hand stuff. You've got two types of ammo that you shoot out of your staff: plasma bolts and stun blasts. Plasma bolts are lethal, while stun blasts, of course, stun enemies. This really just rounds out the whole control scheme, though sometimes they do lean on the shooting mechanic just a little bit too much. Now, I'm going to address what I see as the elephant in this room. This game has some major problems with its characters and its theming. Let's start with the characters. Monkey is rarely more than a macho stereotype, cracking wise at every turn and just being generally uninteresting. By the way, it should be a cardinal sin for any medium of entertainment to make Andy Serkis uninteresting. Trip is more of a hapless damsel in distress than perhaps any video game character ever. While she's very endearing and occasionally during gameplay she is useful to you, she's also just very annoying due to her dialogue. And Pigsy. Pigsy pops up shortly after the halfway point, and he is creepy. He is unfunny. He is disgusting. Poorly developed. And I'm going to say them again just to really emphasize, he is painfully unfunny and creepy as fuck.
You know, are you together? It's just your hand is right on my penis.
And it's not as though these lackluster characters are really embroiled in some all-consuming conflict that examines the failings of society or anything. No, because that would be too complex. No, instead you've got your you help me, I help you plot, your unwilling companions plot, your safe haven isn't actually safe plot, and your revenge for a fallen loved one plot, all in one. It's a fucking deluxe package of all your shitty overused Hollywood storylines all rolled into one game. Oh, what a fucking miracle! This whole game's story frustrated me right up until the end. It holds all its cards right up close until the very end of the game, and only in the epilogue chapter, that is the chapter after the main story of the game has been finished, do they finally start to divulge some answers. I like what they're hinting at, as it finally starts to explore some of those themes of like, who's keeping the slaves, and why, for example, but it ends up being too little too late. If I wasn't determined to finish this game because of the review, I would have given up on it just like I would imagine a lot of people did back when it was new. Although, to give it credit, one has to consider the fact that this game was originally slated to be extended into a franchise, but was discontinued due to those disappointing sales. On one hand, I'm not all that surprised by this. The game is not perfect, far from it in fact, and franchises fail all the time. But let's bring back the comparisons to Uncharted one more time. The first Uncharted game, on its own, without considering the possibility of sequels, was a fun but flawed experience. It had enough going for it that it was greenlit as a franchise, and Uncharted 2 Among Thieves is what followed, and that, arguably, is what really cemented it as a powerhouse franchise on the PlayStation. Now let's take a look back at Enslaved. It, like the first Uncharted, is a flawed but still enjoyable experience. The combat is fun and satisfying, and the lore is rich, if a bit unoriginal. The two biggest problems with it are the weak story and dialogue and the lackluster platforming. But I would argue that this game, like Uncharted, had enough going for it to justify a sequel. A sequel could have refined some of those rough edges of gameplay, expanded the platforming variety, expanded lore, maybe turned Monkey into something other than another macho guy action hero, and Trip into something other than a damsel in distress. Hell, maybe we would have gotten to play as Trip. Maybe Pigsy... Actually, no, Pigsy. But alas, the almighty customers struck it down by withholding their wallets, and unfortunately, now we'll never know. Apparently, not even the power of Andy Serkis and Mose from Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide were enough to save this game. And so we have yet another example of this being, not the best game I've ever played, but also not the worst. Because I have my problems with this game. I've just spent 10-15 minutes talking about them. But I also wouldn't go so far as to say this game was a waste of time or money. I still enjoyed myself playing it. But I want to try something different to end this video. And what I want to try is I want to just say 3 things about each game that I review that I liked about it. The reason for this being that I just spent a lot of time talking about these videos, and I don't really have a way to just sum up my thoughts in a nice little concise way like other reviewers do. Scores, their own special kind of measuring system, whatever. I'm just going to do the 3 things. So 3 things that I liked about Enslaved Odyssey to the West. The first thing I liked was the setting. That's what drew me to the game in the first place, and, the graphics are very pretty, the settings are nice, they're cool. It's a cool setting for a game. The second thing I like about the game is the score, the musical score. It's a good, relatively generic, but that's not really a bad thing in this case, score for a game, and it made some of the more difficult and, longer fights towards the end of the game more interesting. It made it more action-packed. And the third thing that I liked about the game has got to be Andy Serkis. There's nothing that I could not like the guy in. I love his work, and this obviously isn't his finest hour, but I feel like that's more because of the script than it was because of him. His performance was still really good. I still found myself being entertained by Monkey as a character, which, considering how lifeless the script was, is pretty impressive. So kudos to you, Andy. And so there you have it. That's my review of Enslaved Odyssey of the West, along with 3 things that I just liked about the game. So, with all that being said, I have been TheMightyMander, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out, my friends.